Listening is really important in coaching, asking good questions to lead people. Because most of the time you just want to give them advice, especially if you know you've been through it. Yeah, you just want to tell them what to do and like, go do that. That doesn't work because it wasn't their idea, wasn't their plan. So as a good coach, you want to make sure that they develop the processes, the procedures, or a plan for how they're going to move forward. And so
Yeah.
asking good questions is also a really good skill.
Welcome to Career Coaching Secrets, the podcast where we talk with successful career coaches on how they built their success and the hard lessons they learned along the way. My name is Davis Nguyen, and I'm the founder of Purple Circle, where we help career coaches scale their business to $100,000 years, $100,000 months, and even $100,000 weeks. Before Purple Circle, I've grown several 7- and 8-figure career coaching businesses myself, and have been a consultant at 2 career coaching businesses that are doing over $100 million each. Whether you're an established coach or building your practice for the first time, you'll discover the secrets to elevating your coaching business.
Welcome to Career Coaching Secrets Podcast. I'm Kevin, and today we are joined by Merlyn Fance. She is the founder of Breakthrough Seminars, been a coach for 25 plus years, a whole grown adult as we're talking pre-podcast. Welcome to the show, Merlyn.
Thank you. I'm excited about being here.
And I'm really excited to hear about your story because 25 years of coaching is quite a while. So why don't we start at the beginning, the lore? What made you want to become a coach and turn it into a business?
Actually, which is pretty much the story of my career. I started out as a trainer. I originally wanted to be a HR recruiter, which I was, but then when things got rough in the oil and gas business, because I worked for an oil and gas company at the time, they decided that rather than lay some of us off, they would place us into some other roles. So I ended up in training and development. And in training and development, my role was to go out and train employees in the field on how to be great supervisors and managers and team members, because right about the middle of my career as an organizational development specialist and trainer, people started doing self-directed work teams. So that's definitely going to date me when that started. And so I started working with these teams and training their supervisors, training them on how to work with a team. And as I was doing some of that training, I realized that a lot of these people actually needed some one-on-one conversations, because at the time I wasn't calling it coaching. Coaching wasn't a big thing either at that time. But I felt like a group of people in one room, it would be easy for them to hide. And so I came up with this process for working with individuals in the team. And eventually people started calling it coaching or counseling, but I felt like it was more coaching because it was more performance based. Okay. And so that's how I got started. And originally I didn't have any certifications. And so I went and got some, a performance based coaching certification. And I started that process with this oil and gas company. And then the company went under. All right. So now I'm left without a job. So I decided, you know what? I think I'm just going to take my life into my own hands so I can determine when I get laid off. At least I'll know that I'm going to lay myself off. Okay.
Yes.
So when I left there, I had built up a fairly good network, and I really encourage people to do that if they're having a career change or looking to change their career. The access to that is your network, the people that you already know. I had been a member of the American Society of Training and Development. I was their vice president of the Speakers Bureau. And so I had met quite a few people. So when I started my business, I just started, I picked up the phone and called those folk and said, hey, I'm in business. This is what I do. So I started a Breakthrough Seminars. So I started doing seminars, and then I started getting requests for coaching. So then I started doing individual coaching for primarily oil and gas, some healthcare, trying to think of other industries, some education, some pharmaceutical companies, so things like that. And that's really how I got started.
Ooh, that's really interesting. I love how you kind of were old school and you just picked up. Feel like that is like a lost art today and all that. Now, it sounds like
Mhm.
from that's right, like, who are the type of people that you found yourself helping and gravitating? How did you kind of figure out some people call it niche, but your like area of expertise?
Well, because when I was working for corporate, I was coaching and training mostly managers and supervisors. When I left the organization, I was a manager, so I knew that world very well. So I felt really qualified to coach, both from just being a trainer, but having that experience myself. So I kind of knew what the pitfalls were for the average manager or supervisor. And so what I started doing was that's what I promoted, was training that group of people. And I use my network to get that business to,
Mhm.
for instance, I had one client for 15 years. So
Wow,
yeah, that kept me busy doing training and development mostly there. But about 30% of that was individual coaching.
I see. And so, like, let's talk about the present. Like, how do people find you these days?
Still that way. Like the other day, I got a call from a person that I've known for 20 something years to do a workshop. So I generally get calls, because what you want to do when you're in business is get those referrals, okay? Because you don't want to have to work that hard. It's kind of hard to get clients. So it is who you know. So right now, I'm kind of nearing retirement, phasing myself out a little bit, but I enjoy working. So most of my clients come from just a phone call.
Mm.
I am on LinkedIn. I don't do much marketing anymore. I do some contract work for a company out of Boston and one here in Houston. And on that, I tend to do career coaching and counseling. So helping
Mm,
people pivot to another career, helping people decide what career they should be in, coaching them on what strategies are out there now. For instance, like AI, a lot of people are doing their resumes using AI.
yeah.
I don't recommend that you do that, because there are AI trackers out there, and you certainly don't want an employer to see that you used AI to do your resume. But there are certain portions of your LinkedIn and resume that you should use it as a jumping off point, or to get you started, to stimulate your thinking. Okay.
Yeah.
I use an assessment to do that with corporate supervisor and management people. I have 2 or 3 corporate clients that when they have a problem employee, they call me. And then
Mm.
I spend approximately 10 to 12 weeks working with that employee.
That's really interesting. So that's really cool how you got the corporate stuff. Was that always like the case? It sounds like a lot.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Because I
Yeah. It
came
sounds.
out of that environment, I already, knew a bunch of people in that environment. And sometimes when they move from one company to the other, sometimes you keep that old company, but when they move, they call you back and say, now work with me over here. And so that you work with them over there. Okay. Yeah, that's happened to me 4 or 5 times.
So one interesting thing too, right? Because like when you're working in corporate, there is a bit of negotiation, but it's a little different from doing like your own business. So obviously, you don't have to give any hard numbers, but I would love to talk about the evolution of how you price things, because a lot of coaches, they struggle with questions like, how much do I charge? What's that initial number? How do I refine this number over time? And so I'm kind of
Mhm.
curious, what's the journey of your like pricing journey, I guess?
Oh, yeah. It's a lot of fear associated with that, a lot of self value associated with your pricing. It's how much you think you're worth in the marketplace. You do have to respond to the market. So keeping an eye on, you know, what the market is doing, because right now there are a lot of coaches out there. So you've got like
Yeah.
a lot of competition. So you don't want to price yourself too low, as you can guess, but you also don't want to price yourself out of a contract. But one of the things you don't want to do is find yourself working for minimum wage because you underbid it yourself. And that actually
Mm,
comes with experience. My first couple of contracts, even just putting the contract together, the
mm,
proposal together. And so I had to look at what I did research. I would Google what would be the average cost for a career transition coach, how much
mhm,
would be the cost for a leadership coach. And then so I came up with that, with a number out of that. But I also had to search myself and say, how much do I think I'm worth in the marketplace? And that's
mm,
how I came up with the number. And sometimes as you plug that number into your proposal, you're sitting there thinking, am I too high? Am I too low?
There's no
Also
feedback.
had to learn that you've got to consider what I think they call it creep scope. Okay, when you get that contract, a lot of times other little things come in, or what they described or what they say they want you to do. Sometimes the person who hired you to coach is a person you need to be coaching, by the way. Okay.
Yeah.
But you're looking at that number and thinking, should I hit that button or not? And you got to settle on your price, know your value, know what the market can handle, and put that in your contract and hit that send button. And sometimes I don't always feel comfortable, and you just have to let it, as the kids say, let it do what it do. Most of the time, they'll come back to you with either we approve, or rarely do they talk about the fact that they think is too high or too low. I rarely got that kind of a situation, because
that's
then you're going to
reassuring.
have to decide whether or not you want that contract. So coaching is sometimes you're having to coach yourself. This is what I'm worth. This is how much experience I have. I have to go back in and look at my client list. Another little trick I learned was to keep all of the acknowledgement emails that people have sent you, the positive ones, okay? And go back and read through them to see this is what you do. This is what you provide. Consequently, this is what you're worth. And then hit that send button. You just take it as it comes.
That's such great advice. During this time, right? It seems like, you have everything all put together, right? Especially when you look back at it, it's kind of like, oh yeah, like that's what happened, right? But in that moment when you're kind of like, oh my God, maybe you're in the throes of the emotions of pricing and stuff, like who did you kind of go to for support at the time? Or did you kind of do what you said? You're like coaching yourself. You're just like spending time just reflecting by yourself. I'm kind of curious.
Well, actually, it's a combination of both, because sometimes you run into a situation that's a little bit out of your your understanding of what's going on. And so there are some coaches that I rely on, some experts that, are in my network that I call on and share with them what I'm dealing with. And then we sort through it that way. The other one is really listening to the client. Okay, one of the things I've found, sometimes we complicate things with overthinking it, and I'm certainly guilty of that. But sometimes if you just center yourself, calm yourself down, listen to the client, you can hear what's said, of course, but you can also hear
not said.
Okay, and what's not said. And when you hear that, you have to determine, is this client ready to hear this now? Or should we work through some things in a couple of sessions before we get to that? Okay. So there's just a lot of self-reflection, making sure you're not projecting your stuff onto them too. It's real interesting how some of your clients are actually going through some of the same things that you're going through.
Yeah.
It is amazing how that works. So yeah, you want to have, kind of your pool of people that you call on, that you talk to, that you share your experiences with, and help you sort through some things as well. You want to kind of keep yourself as clean as possible.
Yeah. Yeah. And I find that like you bring up a few good points, being very selective of when you kind of like present and stuff. That you brought up a really great point there. The implicit communication. I feel like a lot of times what's not being said is like a huge indicator. So thank you. Yeah. That's amazing.
Listening is really important in coaching, asking good questions to lead people, because most of the time you just want to give them advice, especially if you know what, you've been through it. Yeah, you just want to tell them what to do and like, go do that. That doesn't work because it wasn't their idea, wasn't their plan. So as a good coach, you want to make sure that they develop the processes, the procedures, or a plan for how they're going to move forward. And so asking good questions is also a really good skill.
Yeah. If I could be a little bit cheeky, that's what consultants are for, right? To tell you stuff what to do.
Yeah, that's what they do. They tell you how to do it. Exactly. There are people who will do that for you.
Yeah. Okay. So one of the other things you mentioned too is like you're thinking about retirement and whatnot. And so I'm kind of curious about your future goals, I guess, right? Like, I guess over the last season of your this next season of your coaching business, where do you kind of want it to take you? Have you thought about like exit plans? I'm just kind of curious. Are you thinking about selling off the business? Do you want to just like hand it off or just like turn it off completely? I'm kind of curious on your end.
Well, yeah, I'm actually in the middle of giving that some serious reflection because retirement for me would be probably boring. I
Yeah.
mean, I've had periods where I didn't work at all because of an illness. And then when I recovered, it's like, okay, now what do I do? You've got all this time on your hand, unless you have lots of money for traveling. But I traveled a lot in my corporate life. So that's not a big thing for me, even
Yeah.
though I'd like to do some. So I'm trying to decide, which way I'm gonna get it. To sell it off. You'd have to have like a more stable client base, I would think. And sometimes I get a project here, a project there, and a project there.
Mm,
So I'm kind of assessing that as well. I think I want to do a little bit just to keep my hands in the fire, especially with the way the world's shaping up now. I c- I like the way I like new things, and there are a lot of new things going on
mm,
in the world, new ways to think about things, how you do
yeah.
things. So I'm kind of excited about that and frightened at the same time. So I do want to keep my hands in it a little bit. Just maybe continue to do what I've started doing, taking on projects as they come to me versus hunting for projects for work.
I see. And also too, like with this coaching business, are you by yourself? Do you have a team? I'm very curious about that too.
Okay, primarily I'm by myself. Occasionally I get that contract where they want me to do several things, and some of those things I or don't do well. So there are people, and this is kind of how most of us survive. Okay. There are a group of people that we rely on. For instance, technical writing. I don't do technical writing, but if one of my
Hmm.
clients want technical writing, I have two technical writing people in my network. So I call on them and let
Hmm.
them do that project. Okay. Yeah. So that's kind of how I work. And then they're the same way. If they have a project, they don't do supervisory and management coaching or training, or they don't do career transition, then I go in and do that for them. Okay. So
Mm,
keeping that partnership, it pretty much keeps you alive because you've got these big people like, let's see, Lee Heck Harris and what's another one? Keystone, all these other big coaching organizations that you're competing with.
yeah.
Okay. And so you want to be able to provide as much as possible to keep yourself financially stable.
Yeah. Oh, this is really interesting. And then
Yeah.
also
Coin
too,
Theory. Yeah. Yeah. Yeah.
yeah.
Yeah. There's a bunch of them out there.
So it sounds like you do lean on help sometimes if you have a
Absolutely.
contractor.
Yeah.
Yeah. The other thing I'm very curious about too is like in this season of your business, right? What are some growing pains that you're kind of noticing? Are there like any unexpected things like that are happening on the
Well, one of them right now is how AI is going to impact the training and development coaching business. Okay. How is that going to impact that? How is that going to affect it? And so I'm just curious to see how that's going to work. For instance, I'm putting together a workshop for a client right now. So it's, the traditional way you do that, you do a PowerPoint and you put exercises in it and group discussions and all those kind of things in it. And now, how do you do that same thing, but how do you use these tools to accomplish that? How do you integrate that to your programs? So, because you want to look up to date, you want to look modern, okay? And right now, I don't get a good feel for how that's done. So I'm actually
Mm,
starting to experiment with that a little bit, how that's going to work. So that's
pretty
my
interesting.
biggest concern. Yeah,
Yeah.
is that. And a lot of times people want these quick fixes, want things, and sometimes it just takes a while to get a client positioned in the right space to have the coaching. They have to be willing to be coached because you've been assigned someone from the company, and the company usually doesn't do a good job of explaining to the
Mm,
person why they're being coached. So you got to work through that. So that's always a big concern of when you're going into the contract. And like I mentioned earlier, which is always a shock to me, sometimes the person who hired me is the one that really needs to be coached, or the whole team needs to be coached. So working through those kind of issues have always been a concern, and they continue to be a concern.
One of the interesting things you were mentioning AI. I'm still caught up on the AI thing that you're talking about. There's some people that are very like optimistic about AI, and there's some people like that are doom and gloom, like kind of like right Terminator 2, that old movie, where it's like, oh, is it going to be a Skynet versus robots versus humans, or is it going to be more of a collaborative process? If you were to make a prediction, where do you think it's going to end up? Just out of curiosity.
I hope it's a collaborative process, okay? Because I mean, it's here. You're either gonna have to deal with it. You probably okay. The truth is, you've been dealing with it for a while. Anyway, we just weren't
Yeah.
calling it that. Yeah, I mean, almost
Yes.
everything is. Yeah, so we've been dealing with it for a while. We just now started talking about it out loud. This is what it is. So I'm hoping there is an integration because a lot of people are afraid that AI is going to cause them to lose their job, and I think that's accurate. Okay, that's
Yeah.
going to happen. If I got a I to work with used to be if they were looking for a job or looking for a career change within a month they'd have made that move. Okay, now with the rest of the pack, it is taking them 6 to 9 months to find a job just like everybody else. Okay, so you already see that impact. So I'm hoping that it's both. I'm trying to see where AI is limited, but it's pretty robust in what it can produce. It really is. You can create whole workshops. I have friends who are creating books. You know, you can ask it. Most people use it like a Google, including myself. Okay. So it's here to stay. So we've got to just integrate it in our lives and see where we can survive it. One of the things I start to notice is that in the IT world, a lot of people started going to cybersecurity, and now that industry is full of cybersecurity specialists. So it's saturated.
Yeah.
So where do people? Yeah. So I'm struggling with where do people go? What is the future? What does it integrating AI look like? And what can we do to prepare our kids who are coming out of college for this new world? And how well is that preparation being handled at the moment? So I don't know, but I hope it uses both. And I hope people
Yeah.
start
For
to
me,
embrace it and not fear it.
yeah, like for me, I've been able to speak to all these like AI founders because I do a lot of AI tool reviews and stuff like that. So I connect with these founders
Mm-hmm.
and they tell me their aspect. I think most likely it's probably going to end up co-piloting, and we're going to see this battle for all these different apps and see which one. It's kind of like the dot-com boom back in the day,
Absolutely.
right?
Oh, yeah.
Yeah, yeah.
Yeah.
Now we're dating ourselves. That's like so long ago. That's almost like that's a really long time
Absolutely. Yeah. Sometimes I'll use Chat GPT, I'll use Perplexity, and
Yep.
maybe Gemini,
Yeah.
and just see what they say, see which one gives me the best information,
That's
what I consider the most accurate information.
mhm.
And again, using that to stimulate my thinking, because the temptation is just to use it for everything. But what I don't want to lose is my ability to think for myself.
There was actually a study that came out recently that people's IQ points are dropping because they're so
Uh-huh.
reliant on it, which is pretty crazy. So,
Yeah.
like, yeah. Yeah, it's just like the calculator, when I was a lot younger, they used to ban calculators all the time, and my mental math was
Mm-hmm.
pretty sharp. Over time, since I have the iPhone and now ChatGPT, I can just yap into my phone and just it'll pop out a number,
Mm-hmm.
right? It's yeah, definitely I could see that happening. Okay,
Yeah.
last question for you. You've been around the block. Things have changed over the years, right? Like, I'm
Mm-hmm.
sure you remember the old floppy disk for the computers and stuff like that too, right?
I was thinking about that the other day. Exactly. I remember one of my coworkers when computers first started, she was like really afraid of it. And I remember telling her, just turn it on. Just hit that orange button on the side of your computer. You will not blow up Baytown, Texas. I remember telling somebody that nothing bad is going to happen. Just going to turn this machine on. So I do remember that. Yes.
It's like really funny, like things have changed so much over time. But, what I'm really, really curious about in your particular situation, since you've been in business for so long, what are kind of
Huh?
like the timeless principles that have not changed about business?
Well, again, that would be, you know what? Your access to success is other people. Even if you have a physical illness, you know, how many people do you know that know about that illness? How many people in your network can share information with you about that? The same thing in business. You should get to know people, and that personal contact is absolutely the best. You can use all these tools to reach out to people, but most of us just kind of ignore those things. So you want to do a good enough job so that people refer you. You should have some referrals on LinkedIn, but certainly one of the things you want to do is go talk to people, go where people are that use your business, go where they go. Or if you're going to be an executive coach, where do executives go? Where do they hang out? Okay. Who do you that know these people? Get those introductions done. I would say maybe using AI relying too much on AI, relying too much on it. Yeah. Use the blend, use both of them.
Cool. Well, Merlyn, how can people find you and connect with you?
Some people find me on LinkedIn. Okay. But most of them are people that, like I said, that back many years ago, I became the officer for a organization, the American Society of Training and Development. I think they call it something else now. And the advice someone gave me was, if you want to grow your business, you need to become active in a really active organization. So I chose that one, and they were absolutely right. When I started, it's a lot of work belonging to being an officer in an organization. Thing was, just had a child. I was like, I'm too busy. I can't take on anything else. Lost my job. I just started this business. I don't have time for it. And they said, look, give it a try. And so I ran for office, and I got business out of that and still get some trickling in even today. For the next 10 or 12 years, I got like a lot of business out of that because I knew a lot of people. Okay. And so that's the referrals are the absolute best. Now, there's a lot of pressure because they may say how great and wonderful you are. And you're sitting there thinking, wow, I hope I can do that for this client, or I will do that for this next client. Yep. And do you have some failures? Oh, yeah, you do. Comes with the territory.
Merlyn, it's just so refreshing just to talk to someone who's been in the industry for a long time and how you're thinking about the future, about AI as well. And you didn't say it explicitly on the podcast. It goes back to what you were talking about before, what's not being said. But as you're sharing your story, I found it so cool that each phase or season of your life led to the next season. It was kind of cool to see how your corporate career kind of because
springboarded me. Yeah. Because
here's the thing.
If you'd asked me when I got out of college, if I was going to be doing this, I would have even said, what are you talking about? What is that? And when I became an organizational development training specialist, I didn't even know what OD meant. What do these people do? So I had to learn all of that. And so my advice to people who is when an opportunity come up, take a look at it. Because I wouldn't have chosen this normally. I just wouldn't have.
Yeah.
But I like people. I like working with people. I like seeing people succeed. And so it kind of fit in. So I always advise people now, if an opportunity comes up, at least look at it. Take a look at it and see what you think. Especially with a lot of things are going to be going away and a lot of new things are coming. So if you look at some of the job descriptions on LinkedIn or Indeed, wherever people look, you're starting to see these titles that nobody's ever heard of before. So look at that, because that could be the very thing that jumpstarts a new career for you.
Yeah. And that's a thing too, right? I'm very guilty of this. I was saying this before, but I think there's a tendency to run away from your past, right? But it's really interesting how you leaned into it and used it to, what you said, springboard onto the next thing. But that's my really long way of just saying, hey, I appreciate you just coming onto the podcast, sharing all the knowledge, sharing all the timeless principles that have helped grow your business. And I know a lot of coaches will really benefit from this conversation. So thank you so much for coming on the podcast, Merlyn.
So excited to be here. So I appreciate you inviting me.
That's it for this episode of Career Coaching Secrets. If you enjoyed this conversation, you can subscribe on YouTube, Spotify, Apple Podcasts, or wherever you're listening to this episode to catch future episodes. This podcast was brought to you by Purple Circle, where we help career coaches scale their business to $100,000 years, $100,000 months, or even $100,000 weeks, all without burning out and making sure that you're making the impact and having the life that you want. To learn more about our community and how we can help you, visit joinpurplecircle.com.